Hi, welcome to another set of video notes. Sorry that I kind of cut out so quick, but YouTube and iPad want to limit me to 15 minutes. What's that about? So they kicked me off. So here you go. We're going to talk about absolute value. Now remember, we just talked about graphing, and this is your real part, and this axis is your imaginary. So you want to point, say, go here. Well, we also can talk about the absolute value of that number, and really that's looking at how far over you go and how far up you go. Oh, look, what did we just make? We made a right triangle, so it's Pythagorean theorem, and it is just really, oh, I don't have a black marker, sorry. It's really just a squared plus b squared, add them together, take the square root. So, right here in this problem, what's our a? 5, and we square it. What's our b? Negative 12, and you square it. 5 squared is 25. Negative 12 squared is 144. That is 169, and the square root of that, hey, that's one of those perfect numbers, so it's 13. Okay, so the absolute value of this number is actually 13, and that's given by the distance from the origin up to where the point is. Okay, if you have a number like this, you might go, oh, what do I do? Well, think of it as 0 plus 17i. So your a is 0, you're going to square that. Your b is 17, you're going to square that. You get 0 plus 289. So square root of 289, if you put that in your calculator, you just get 17 back. Okay? And that kind of makes sense because it would just be up to 17i, and so it's 17 units long. Okay? So that gives you your absolute value, or what we might think of as the length. All right, now, the whole reason we started these lessons is because we had this problem, and if you recall, we subtracted 10 from each side. We got x squared equals negative 16, and you tried putting that in your calculator, and it gave you an error because it's not a real number. But remember that I is equal to negative 1. So if you think of this as negative 1 times 16, well, what is, square root of negative 1? Well, that's just I. 16 is 4, so it can either be a positive 4i or a negative. So we write that little symbol, okay? And that's your answer and you're done. Right, let's come over and try another one. We've got x squared minus 8 equals negative 36. So we add 8 to both sides. We get x squared equals negative 28. And then you say, take the square root of each side. And so you get square root of negative 28. Well, once again, think of this as negative 1 times 4 times 7, because 4 is the biggest perfect square that goes into it. What is the square root of negative 1? I. What is the square root of 4? It's 2. And you can't take the square root of 7, so it stays there. And once again, plus or minus, okay? Let's do our last example. We got 2x squared plus 18 equals negative 72. There's no b term. We don't want to factor. Let's just try to do the square root. So we subtract 18 from each side. We're left with 2x squared on this side. Negative 72 minus 18 is negative 90. Now, I don't think we should take the square root yet. What's there? Oh, a 2, so let's divide it by the 2. And now we've got x squared equals negative 45. X is almost by itself. We need to get rid of the squared, so take the square root. Now, let's break this up. We know it's a negative 1. What is the biggest perfect square that goes into 45? Oh, 9 goes in, and 5. Square root of negative 1 is I. Square root of 9 is 3. And the 5 just stays underneath. Okay? And that's how you work with complex numbers. That's how they come into play with quadratic equations. We'll be practicing. Bye.